Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2021 NYU Rory Myers College of Nursing State of the College. I am Eileen Sullivan Marks, privileged to be Dean of this wonderful College of Nursing, and I look forward to presenting to you today some of our great news and lay out some background and challenges as we move forward. So thank you again for being with us today. And also, I want to particularly thank my production team who's been doing this work for our State of the College for a number of years now. And that is Hank Sherwood, Keith Olson, Ellen Lyons, Tom Friedman, and Ian Headley. Thank you to them. And here we go. Next slide, please. So let's start with some data. It's very important to have the information in front of us to understand what we're about. And these are just some snippets to lay out a groundwork for what we have been doing, and then I'll put it in the context of our Thinking Big strategic plan. So here's some interesting facts. In this year, we did see an increase in both minority, faculty, and student representation. We've logged in more than 7,500 plus hours of remote learning, which we had started to introduce prior to COVID, but of course that has been catalyzed and sped up. Our nursing students work with our faculty administered more than 3,000 COVID-19 vaccinations. And in the beginning of COVID and continuing, we continue to deliver bags of PPE and distribute them. And our students graduated successfully, 1,065 of them last year. And 100% of our faculty and all of our students and 7% of our staff are fully vaccinated, which is an NYU requirement. Thanks. Next slide, please. So remember that our 2015 to 2020 strategic plan is called Thinking Big, B for belonging, I for innovation, G for global. So I'm going to deliver this update around those three things. So next slide. Starting with belonging. So you might say, for those of you outside of NYU, what does belonging mean? Well, belonging is something that belongs, to be in the right place or to feel that you are in the right place. Belonging is beyond diversity, beyond inclusivity. It's a part of equity. When you feel that you belong fully, then you're a part of the enterprise. And so at NYU Myers and at NYU, we use belonging as a way to reinforce that sense of accomplishment. So next slide, please. And here at Myers, we have our Inclusivity, Diversity, Belonging, and Equity Steering Committee. A shout out to Chair and our Assistant Dean for IDBE work, Tanisha Johnson-Campbell, and members Michelle Crespo-Fierro, Selena Gillis, Allison Squires, Hank Sherwood, and Susan Lippman, representing faculty and staff involved with this effort. Next. And here's some of their work. We have a Diversity Matters series with monthly speaker events open to the entire NYU Myers community. We have focused on very special initiatives related to leadership development, holistic admissions, recruitment to overcome barriers that we might have known or learned about for student admissions. And we work with our NYU's Office of Global Inclusion, Diversity and Strategic Innovation in a very strong partnership with that group, led by Dr. Lisa Coleman, our Vice President for Global Inclusion. Lisa knows nursing very well, and she and her team are engaged with us on a regular basis. Thank you to them. Next slide, please. Here's an example of belonging at the community level. This December, at our annual valedictory celebration for graduates completing their degree in December, we are going to recognize Professor Selena Gillis with our Humanitarian Award. Dr. Gillis also is our Associate Dean for our undergraduate program. She worked, as you see here in these photos, at the community level and with partners at the New York chapter of the National Black Nurses Association. Next slide. To establish or work with already established programs throughout the boroughs of New York City. So she and colleagues ran 4 church-based vaccination sites, more than 65 pop-up sites in hard-hit neighborhoods across New York City. They established not only opportunities for people to get vaccinations, but also to get information about those vaccinations. So as you see here, more than 28,000 COVID-19 vaccines were distributed, a number of those with our nursing students at both the undergraduate and graduate levels. Thank you and congratulations to Dr. Gillis and her teams. Next. And some great news just this week, we received information from Insight into Diversity that we are now recognized for our outstanding commitment to diversity and inclusion with the 2021 Higher Education Excellence in Diversity Award. Part of the reason we got this award is for all of the work that we just shared with you, our connection to the Office of Global Inclusion, our work across academic, across community, across staff needs, and our recent new partnership with Howard University College of Nursing and Health Sciences, historic Black college and university that is partnering with us, and I'll share some more details about that in a bit. Next. At the national level, it's important from the belonging perspective for us to realize the new Future of Nursing 2020 to 2030, charting a path to achieve health equity. You might recall that in partnership with the National Academy of Medicine and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation in 2010, the first Future of Nursing report came out. This is an update from that report, and it is emphasizing health equity, what prescient ways we need to go to another level, not only within our profession, but across our patient, family, and individual care delivery. So health equity, value with payment for what nurses do, and safety in the workplace are the 3 themes for 2020 to 2030. And you'll hear more about how well positioned we are at Myers to address these 3 important goals. Next. I've been part through the American Academy of Nursing for a new national commission to address racism in nursing. It's being led through the American Nurses Organization, American Nurses Association, as well as a number of other leading nurse organizations. And the mission is to set as the scope and standard of practice that nurses confront and mitigate systemic racism within the nursing profession and address the impact that racism has on nurses and nursing. Because how can we better address equity gaps in healthcare delivery if we don't also address that within our own profession, our own education systems, our own practice systems? I am one of a number of more than 20 or so commissioners, and so is one of our alum, Dr. Mary Joy Garcia Dia. And as you see, she received her MS from Myers in 2001 and is a president of the nurses in the Philippine community. Next slide. Also for health equity, I was privileged to be able to appoint Dr. Audrey Linden, professor, and also our Assistant Dean for Clinical Research this year as the named professor for the Vernice Ferguson Professor for Health Equity. Dr. Linden's been doing a great deal of work in the maternal child health quality care area across the globe and within the United States. And she also has been addressing the issues related to gaps in maternal health care for women of color. She was part of the not only inspiration, but the connection to Howard University prior to coming to NYU. Dr. Linden had engaged with Howard University through her work in this area and used grant funding to start our initial opportunity to include Howard University students in our undergraduate summer research immersion experience. So congratulations to Audrey, and thank you so much, Audrey, for all that you do for Myers and health equity. Next slide. At the national level, the National Black Nurses Association recognized Dr. Selena Gillis again as Nurse of the Year in 2020, and I want to give a shout out to her again for that. Dr. Linden as well received an award from the Journal of Midwifery and Women's Healthcare for the best research article entitled Listening to Women, Women of Color to Improve Experiences in Birth Care. And Dr. Mimi Niles and Fidel Lin were recognized as Nurses You Should Know this year. Next slide. Let's move on now to innovation. Innovation, as we've been defining it in our strategic plan, is something where we make changes established, especially by introducing new methods, ideas, or products. And you've heard us talk about innovation in the past through things like design thinking. We've had summits sponsored by some of our Dean's Council members, Dr. Barandes, as well as the Rita and Alex Hillman Foundation. Next slide. So I want to talk a little more about innovation that we've been doing with Howard University College of Nursing and Allied Health Science plus NYU Myers. I already mentioned the undergraduate immersion research program that we started with virtually, thank goodness. During COVID, we were planning to do that in person. But that has grown to also include the Hartford Institute for Geriatric Nurses Intensive Summer Scholars Program, led by Professor Tara Cortez with Howard University nursing faculty. In addition, Howard Nursing University students have been recruited for the National Dental Association Interprofessional Student Leaders Program as part of our ONEP program led by Erin Hartnett and Dr. Judy Haber. And we also have NIH research-funded education in cardiovascular conditions that I already mentioned. Another, it's not so much fun, but a happy moment as we had our American Academy of Nursing policy conference this year in person a few weeks ago at the Marriott Marquis in Washington, D.C., because of the relationship that I, as outgoing president of the organization, had with Dean Gina Brown at Howard University. Dr. Brown suggested that she bring the mobile van that gives vaccines and rapid tests right to our site in Washington, D.C. at 10th and L Street, big van parked there. You had to be vaccinated to attend the conference, but this shows that nurses also put action in place so that people walking by wanting to know what was going on, they could get a vaccine, they could get education about vaccinations, and they could get rapid tests, as well as participants in the conference could go out and get a rapid test. Some of them availed themselves to that for further reassurance. And it was there because Myers and Howard had a partnership. Next slide. Innovation's also present, as you know, in our Clinical Simulation Learning Center. And EPIC is now fully operational. So we use the same documentation system that's used at NYU Langone Health and many other health facilities, so that our students are operating that documentation system right in the lab. And so they will have a seamless transition to the workplace. Over the year, not so much over the year, but over a week, 850 students are being taught in the Clinical Simulation Center. And we also are planning, of course, you have to constantly upgrade anything that is innovative and high tech. So we'll be advancing that through 22 and 2023 to do new simulation capabilities. And we thank the Yucatan Foundation for its gift of $500,000 for expansion and virtual simulation capability. Next slide. And we've launched, as I announced last year, a gift from Howard and Rory Myers for a scholarship gift of $7 million for our third year undergraduate nursing students to attend a special interprofessional clinical education clinical program at the NYU Langone Health Long Island Hospital, formerly known as Winthrop Hospital in Long Island, along with medical students from NYU's new Long Island School of Medicine, largely a primary care initiated medical school. And this is the team that has brought the students together. So what's happening is that medical students, nursing students are taking care of patients at the bedside together. Now that may happen spontaneously. We are intentionally putting together where they intentionally learn to plan together about with the patient and their family about their care, and learn how to come from their different perspectives together for the best plan. And they also are having clinical simulation. So 12 students are in that, nursing students are in that program now, matched with a class of 24 medical students. And that'll continue over the next 5 years and beyond. Next slide. And so one of the things that's important is that we've been finding our way back through the COVID pandemic. Many people ask me, is Myers back at 433 First Avenue? We actually never fully shut down because, except for the summer of 20, nursing students were back in our clinical simulation center. But now faculty and staff are back at Myers. All students are in person at the undergraduate level. At the graduate level, we've increased some virtual remote learning that has been very advantageous to our graduate students who often are working full-time, and their schedules are now much more flexible. We have, of course, COVID safety measures in place in the building. We mask, everyone's vaccinated. There's no eating right now together in the building. If we get through this winter with continued low rates of COVID-19, I think that will change in the spring. As I mentioned, virtual activity does have some advantages, as we've all learned. We can sometimes be in more places at once than we ever thought we could be. You can asynchronously listen, for example, to the State of the College address. But being in person also makes a huge difference. As we came back together, just that sense of being with another human being was so much of an advantage that we have to learn how to do both and. We also now are able to work in hybrid schedules so that staff are able to, and faculty have designated days where they're in the office or out of the office, and that's more efficiently known. We have sign up when you walk out of the elevators. We have a whiteboard. I'm in today, I'm at home today. Those sorts of things are there and make it a warm atmosphere. And I want to also mention that all clinical experiences are in person and have been since fall of 20. So there's no disruption in that. Next slide. So I mentioned design thinking. Now, design thinking is an innovative way to judge better ways of doing things and solve problems. And we started this project some years ago and indeed graduated our first group of undergraduates last year who had design thinking thematically put into place throughout their curriculum. So as they enter the workforce, they're ready to do innovative thinking, design thinking, hackathons. They're at the forefront of that. One of the important things to understand is that design thinking begins not with saying, oh, I have a problem, I got to fix things. It starts with a sense of empathy. It starts with a sense of compassion. And then how can we go here or go there? So in the sense of health equity or thinking globally, design thinking is a good framework for the integration of social determinants of health into our practice and education. And also we've put it in our simulation experiences. And this was also something that gave us recognition by our Diversity HEED Award that we recently received. We also have put it into the Foundations of Teaching Nursing in summer 2021, where we're working with not only our curriculum, but our own faculty and how to improve your doing with your teaching. But now we've partnered with NYU Langone Health in their nurse residency program to develop design thinking that's integrated within nurse residency right to practice. And this bridges, importantly, for example, our own graduates who had this in their prior program who are now practicing at Langone Health and in a nurse residency. But even if you are at Langone, you're a graduate from another school of nursing, we're now working partnered with Dr. Deb Albert and her team to really bring design thinking to their programs as well. And it's continuing to now link innovation and social determinants of health in our undergrad curriculum. Next slide. We've continued to be very active with our Myers Biological Lab here in the building at 433 First Avenue. It's a small area. It's a well planned and established room for all sorts of biological research, which our faculty need as mostly part of the research that they're doing. And as you can see, it's allowed us to increase blood sample processing by 15%. It's been part of 3 NIH P20 center funded studies that we have here. It's enabled us to put into our resources that we have when we submit grants that we have this kind of opportunity and a resource for faculty conducting research. We've been able to transfer a number of specimens and store them through freezing in a biorepository for future analysis. We've identified lab partners so that we can expand the capabilities and foster more collaboration. And we, as I mentioned, maintain this biorepository so that future work could be done. Next slide. So let's talk a little bit more in innovation as we're talking about the numbers of our students. So as you see in the very top violet colored line, our total enrollment as targeted through our budget is to maintain a student body of 1,520. We're usually always above that. That stretches us a bit, particularly for space in classrooms. somewhat for clinical sites and also for faculty that need to be hired, particularly to cover small clinical groups. So we are we're over that, not quite by 100, but by 90 some, and that includes all degree programs. But this is a good sign. It's not decreasing, we're holding steady. Next slide. And on this slide, there's a couple of, and we know we have a lot of numbers here, but there's a couple of numbers I want to point out that are really important for us to think about. One is that we have a large number of applicants for all of our programs. So that, you know, in the second column, you see that for both of our BS programs, our traditional undergraduate program and our accelerated program, we had almost 5,000 applicants, 4,800. We admitted 658, which is our capacity. But as you see, the enrolled numbers are at 45%. So why is that? If you think people really want to come here, we're accepting you. Of that 658, 298 enrolled. And I want to hold that thought until we get to another slide, and then we'll talk about that. For our MS, our DNP, and our PhD programs, these are very typical of national programs. We have a higher enrollment yield for MS because those are usually local people, many of whom are employed at NYU, Langone Health, or other of the big health systems here in Manhattan, and they know they want to come to NYU. A number may be our undergrad alumni. Same for their DNP, a Doctorate of Nursing Practice program. And the number here of PhD students, we keep around 10 that we admit every year. We hope to yield at least or more than half, and that is about average for a number of research-intensive leading schools of nursing. Next slide. And this slide shows the diversity of our first-year students who were admitted, both our traditional and our accelerated students. The green represents the national average through the American Association of Colleges of Nursing, and the violet represents NYU Myers. So you see here that we have fewer white and more diverse than average across the spectrum of ethnic and racial identified areas. And I often get asked about international students. We have very few international, that's non-US students. Partly that has to do with the opportunities. If nurses want to practice in their home countries, you really need to get educated and licensed in that country. Next slide. So here we go back to a couple of data points I want to point out. So for our traditional first-year undergraduate admissions, these are students who are admitted to NYU out of high school or maybe after a gap year. They do not have a prior college degree. So for our slots that we aim for around 70 or more a year, we had 3,000 applications. That's up 38% from 2020. People ask me, are people really interested in being nurses? Are they still, is it dropping? No, the interest is high. They want to be a nurse and they want to come to NYU. So with the number that we have to enroll, we, out of that 3,100 applicants, were only able to admit 6%. That's the lowest admission rate, acceptance rate on all of NYU. President Hamilton pointed this out just this past Parents and Alumni Weekend. We are more exclusive in admitting now than Stern and the College of Arts and Sciences. And as someone pointed out, it rivals Harvard admissions. However, when we look at enrolling those people who we highly select, only 39% of those come to us. So what is that about? Financial aid. We are not able to fully fund all the financial aid that our students need when they apply and are admitted. So they choose often to go elsewhere where their financial aid can either be met or the tuition costs are lower. So that's still a great challenge for us to meet that difference. Next slide. And just to remind you on these two wheels that our consolidated budget is around $81 million, and that our revenue largely still is tuition and fees divided in these other areas, as you see, and that largely we spend the money on salaries, fringe benefits, and also contribute to the larger university budget and expense. So we do our part as partners at the university, and we rely on tuition and fees. Next slide. We continue to do quite well in 2021 funding in research. Totaling research funding for our research over $10 million, which will keep us in the ranks of being among the top 10. Number 8, number 9 is where we've been for the last few years. And that's that to be and remain in the top 10 for over a decade is superb. And then you see the breakdown in government sources of funding. Of course, there's the National Institute of Health, but there's other federal funding from the Center for Disease Control and the Health Resources and Services Administration. Next slide. Just as an example for some of our high amount awards, you see here listed Dr. Ab Brody, who does work with dementia patients who are in need of hospice. We have Dr. Gregory Falcon, who has T32 as a training grant for researchers in drug abuse research. Dr. Bei Wu has gotten funding for an intervention to improve oral health in individuals with mild dementia. And our assistant professor, Dr. Tina Sadarangani, has been leveraging mobile health technology to reduce avoidable healthcare among utilization among persons with aging needs. So you see 3 areas right there in top funding are coming in the area of aging, which is one of our signature programs. In addition to this, hot news, which we don't have on the slide, that more recently Myers received its first P50 grant from NIH along with Rutgers Institute for Healthcare Policy and Aging Research with an $11.5 million award from the National Institute on Minority Health and Health Disparities. And Dr. Bei Wu is a principal investigator on this grant, along with Gigi Dong, a friend of geriatrics, a colleague of both mine and Dr. Terry Fulmer and Dr. Bei Wu, and he's director of Rutgers Institute for Health, Healthcare Policy and Aging Research. So all of these things continue to build on our excellent work and rankings. Next slide. So however you view rankings, here's some that people pay attention to. For the first time this year, the US News and World Report ranked nursing at an undergraduate level. We never had that ranking before. It was always nursing was ranked at the graduate level. So for the first time, US News and World Report ranked undergraduate programs, and we're in the top 10 where we should be. I think we're the best, but you know, US News and World Report's got us at 7, and the factors of differences are minuscule. We're number 12 in master's programs, and we've been number 7. We're hovering around 7, 8, 9, we think, for what'll come out finally this year for NIH funding as budgets are finalized. Next slide. So one of the things I wanted to emphasize and congratulate our communications team, our Director of Communications, Keith Olson, Hank Sherwood, who does graphics, and you can see all the lovely graphics in these slides, but also they think about who we are and what it is that we want to communicate, not only within our school, to our alumni, to potential applicants, to potential faculty, but to the world about what we're producing, who we are at Myers. So here you see some of the excellent work that they produce, along with input from Rachel Harrison, who is our representative from NYU's Public Affairs and Communications Office. So we have newsletters, print material that's also digitally available. We've got a number of Twitter followers and Instagram followers. The students are very active, of course, on Instagram. And we have a very specific digital advertising campaign that has really helped us. We can follow this directly to see how it influences certain matriculate students in certain programs where admissions might be falling off or flattening out. So we use this digital advertising to engage and bring students to us. And we've been, of course, doing tip sheets along with all of NYU, but our own Myers tip sheets for remaining productive while working from home and keeping our well-being going. So thanks for all of that innovative work. Next slide. And in addition to internal, Rachel Harrison has really led us to, with our faculty and others, to be present in major media outposts and quotes from nurses who are our faculty and our students. And we push these out. You can follow them on our webpage to see how important we've been to be talking about vaccine hesitancy. Dr. Donna Hallis. I've talked about the importance of nurses being scientists in the field and Scientific American. So this has been terrific work. Next slide. So let's talk a bit about global, the third in our BIG series, and how we've been managing to stay globally focused during a time where we're not so much isolated, but certainly not moving around the globe. So from global, we talk about global as relating to the world, worldwide, or universal. Next slide. So the J term, which is a well-known NYU term in January, 2 to 3 weeks in length, a few less than a full credit course, but an immersion type of course that NYU has offered for many years. And of course, we've been doing J terms globally in either our health systems comparative course or our issues and trends course. And so having students travel during the J term has been impossible, as you know, earlier with COVID. NYU this year also decided that it was going to continue to hold on J term courses that travel to other parts of NYU for this January 2022, except for nursing. And so when they made that decision, they say, but we are going to continue with nursing's new course that will be led by Dr. Kim Glassman at NYU Abu Dhabi, with Abu Dhabi nurses who lead some of their major institutions there. Dr. Glassman has professional relationships with both UAE nurses and other leading nurses in the field. And 5 graduate students will be going with her in January for this important goal of ours for a long time. So congratulations, Dr. Glassman and Dr. Knowles and Carrie Stalonis for getting this to really happen this year. Next slide. So we have a number of other global initiatives that have continued despite being separated. Part of it is that we can do things virtually, but part of it is just a hardworking group of people who have stayed with us. So we have been part of a grant for Liberia Responsive and Resilient Health Systems Initiative, where we are the lead nursing school for advancing Liberian nurses to continue their work and growth. And one of them is a textbook distribution that was done during the pandemic, shipping it right from Myers 433 First Avenue to Liberia. And we piloted the second ever online licensing exam for nurses and midwives in Africa, where they had iPads, which often are in poorly lighted. They take the test in a poorly lighted building, but now they're taking it with iPads with better experiences. We remain engaged with the Ghana Nurse Leaders Program, 11 nurses finishing that effort this year, and continue with what is now 10 years of work with the Rwanda Health Resources for Health Systems Resources and Human Resources for Health. 5 faculty continue to provide clinical and classroom instruction to master's students at the University of Rwanda School of Nursing and Midwifery. And we're doing, as Dr. Robin Clark, who's been engaged in all of these programs, notes it's first time teaching 2 cohorts simultaneously. So virtual work has really enabled us to continue this work. And I want to acknowledge our global team here at Myers, Carrie Stalonis and Harina Kurtz, so Hanada Kurtz, who have really just been relentless in seeing this work through. So next slide. So we also wanted to learn more about our students' interests when we open up in global experiences and what opportunities they've already have, maybe even prior to coming to NYU. And so we conducted and just completed analysis of a lengthy survey, lengthy for students, which is more than 3 minutes, to complete to learn about students' global interests and experiences. And we have a lot of drill down data, but the headlines are that there is high interest among all of our students in a study away opportunities, both a semester study away, which our students can do in the sophomore year, as well as a need to integrate global more into our courses. But the limitations on our students being able to participate in study experiences or away experiences is largely financial, being able to afford to pay for the travel or to take time off from work in which they're already earning dollars that they need to make up for, as I mentioned earlier, this lack of financial aid that we have for all students. And so that is showing up in our ability to be challenged to deliver the right global experiences. Next slide. We have, and for a number, over a decade now, a WHO collaborating center in aging in Pan American Health Organization. And this is led by myself and Dr. Nancy Van Devanter and Professor Emeritus Dr. Madeline Nagel. And in this year, we conducted, while it was virtual, a qualitative needs assessment on the training needs of interprofessional workforce in Eastern and Southern Caribbean region, finding that they need and are asking for more work in learning about non-communicable diseases and also mental health issues. As you see here, depression, substance abuse, dementia, and a need for health promotion and educational programs. So we'll now, just completed this survey, start to build this in to the work that we have with nursing schools and nurses and other interprofessional schools in this region. Next slide. And this year I introduced our Dean's Global Health Lecture Series. And so we just held our first, we'll be doing 2 a semester, on the impact of COVID-19 pandemic on our global health project, Stories from Nursing, moderated by our Executive Vice Dean and Professor Sean Clark, so that each of our faculty presented the work that they've been doing around despite and around COVID. And this is recorded and available for you if you search on it through the website. I think it's up. I just saw, it may not be up yet, but it will be because we just saw the initial editing script. Next slide. So beyond thinking big, you always have to be preparing, but moving beyond some important things that are occurring that I want you to be aware of. So next slide. So we have a number of new faculty who joined us this year. As you see here, we continue to have need for not just more faculty, but replacement faculty. And we're thrilled to be able to bring Doctors Birdsall, Brader, Doherty, who've been very active on our faculty, even virtually. I mean, remember, new people come on, you may not even have met them in person, but here they are, and now we're increasingly having the opportunity to meet in face. And Dr. Mickey Meadows Oliver, a clinical professor, and Dr. Sharon O'Neill will be joining us shortly. She may already have started, clinical associate professor, senior people who bring a breadth of experience to our faculty. Next slide. And congratulations again to Dr. Duramo Melkas, our Vice Dean of Research, who has plans for retirement, has announced her retirement. We'll be celebrating Gail as time goes on. But Dr. Melkas has done the heavy lift for bringing our School of Nursing from largely a project-oriented research school to a top 10 NIH research intensive school of nursing since she joined us in 2010. As you can see, since she's been here, we've had awards at $70 million. She established infrastructures to enable us to grow, like a peer review committee, biostatistics core, a postdoc training program, some of it integrated with NYU's postdoc opportunities, but we grew more. The creation of the Myers Biological Lab, our first wet lab. And she's a PI and director of our first National Institute of Health P20 Center, focusing on precision health and diverse population. P centers grow and train young investigators, conduct research in this area, and distribute pilot grants. And that's why you need these kind of centers to continue your growth. And the first awardee she was of the NYU's Distinguished Mentor Award at our CTSI, which is a collaborating center interprofessional research group housed at NYU Langone Health. And so we'll be celebrating Gail. Congratulations to her. It's always difficult to see pillars of individuals who create so much move on. But I know Gail will continue to see NYU Myers as her home and continue in a new phase of contributions to scholarship. So thank you, Gail, from me personally, but also thank you from all of Myers and NYU. Next slide. So with that, today, I'm very pleased to now announce to you all that Dr. Bei Wu will succeed Gail as Vice Dean for Research in January 2022. We'll have more on this in an announcement out, but as you can see earlier in our work, Dr. Wu is a social scientist. She's one of the major contributors to our Aging Portfolio Research Initiative. She's an exemplary mentor, as was Dr. Melkus, and really will now be able to look at our research enterprise at Myers and plan for the next future 5 to 10 years of what's the next way that we can work together. And with that, she'll be working closely with our faculty, but also with Dr. Audrey Linden, who I mentioned is our Assistant Dean for Clinical Research, and now Dr. Victoria Von Dixon, who has been director of our PLES Center, who will now be our Assistant Dean for Research Innovation. So with these three strong faculty leaders, as well as our Office of Research directed by William McCormick, we'll really be able to continue this wonderful growth and legacy and contribution to health science. So thank you, Dr. Wu, for stepping into this role. Next slide. As I mentioned, Dr. Von Dixon has been director of our PLES Center, endowed by Muriel and Virginia Pless for research. And two things to recognize her this year. She's been appointed as vice chair nationally for the Nursing's Council for the Advancement of Nursing Science. This is part of the American Academy of Nursing, but it is the only nursing organization that singularly focuses on nursing research. So it is the go-to organization for individuals who want to continue to grow nursing research, but also to interface with the NR, the National Institute of Nursing Research. And so congratulations for Dr. Dixon to being appointed as vice chair of that organization. And in addition, this year, she was the recipient of the Heart Failure Society of America's 2021 Nursing Research Leadership Award for her extraordinary achievement and excellence in nursing that improves patients with heart failure. Next slide. So also we've had a number of appointments and promotions, as you see here, we announced throughout the year. One of the important things I want to note with this is one of my goals and all of our goals as I arrived is that I wanted to see growth of our clinical assistant professors to being promoted through the ranks clinical associate to clinical professor. And this year we saw 4 promotions in that area. Doctors Susan Altman, Selena Gillis, Stacey Keating, and Emerson Ia. Congratulations to you all for your next steps. And also recognition of some faculty leadership changes and program directors. Dr. Chin Park in nursing informatics, Corinne Boyer in our new master's in clinical research nursing, and Dr. Michelle Knapp taking over from Dr. Candace Knight, who's stepping down in that role as program director for the Psych Mental Health Nurse Practitioner Program. Next slide. And celebrating our new fellows in the American Academy of Nursing this year, as you see here, our alum. Dr. Sasha James Contarelli and Dr. Carolyn Dorson were recently also recognized with our Nursing Alumni Awards. So congratulations to them and all of you. Next slide. And here at the American Academy of Nursing this year, we're thrilled to be celebrating Dr. Terry Fulmer, our inaugural Dean of NYU Roy Myers College of Nursing, as a living legend, one of the highest honors in nursing. We celebrated her 2 weeks ago, both virtually and in person, and I was thrilled to be able to grant that award as president this year. And we'll continue to look for opportunities when we're more able to celebrate in person to recognize Dr. Fulmer for this fabulous achievement. Next slide. So that pretty much brings us to the end We have opportunities for you to put Q&A. Probably should have mentioned that earlier. If anyone has any questions or thoughts, I know that one of the things everyone always want to know from me as I watch that is, are there people still interested in becoming nurses? Because we are hearing continuously that nurses are tired and burnt out and stepping down from the profession in different parts of the country and parts of the world. And yes, the numbers are telling us that, so we need to all start to be very innovative, think big, think global, and think about belonging to solve that problem. Here in the Northeast, in New York City, we're seeing some of that, not as much as the news media around the country would have you think, but I'm optimistic in the sense that we continue to have people very interested in nursing and always very willing to join our professional organization and our profession altogether. So I'm going to close there. I welcome continued dialogue with you all, and thank you so much for being with us today. And you can spread the words to your friends and colleagues that they can watch this as we'll put it up on our webpage as soon as it's ready. Thank you. Here's something from Gail. Gail wants to remind everyone, for those of you, this is with all respect, Gail, clarity, but a little bit of inside baseball. Gail will remain P20 Center Director and on faculty, because she's getting a lot of questions as if she's going off into the sunset. So just to clarify that Gail is on sabbatical. Many people in nursing, when you're on sabbatical, spend more time than you think working, and she will continue in the role as director of the P20 Center, and will continue to be on faculty. Thank you so much, and for some thank you comments, and off we go to end this program for the day. Thank you very much.